All right. Welcome into this episode of Farz Cast. Farzin Vousoughian here. Thank you guys for joining me on this episode. Sorry, Melody McAllister. Well, if you're watching the video version, you see her. You see her lovely face. She's here. I'll introduce her in a moment. We just had a funny conversation before we went live. She's
funny.
Yeah, very funny. I'll see. I kind of just, she asked me a question and I just ignored it. I'll answer her question while we're doing the podcast. But anyway, before I forget, big thanks to everyone who wished me a happy birthday. I haven't done a podcast in a couple of weeks. Usually, what I like to do is on my birthday, just chill and relax, and then the following weekend is Memorial Day weekend, and that's just 2 nice weekends of just relaxation. So big thanks to everyone who sent me messages, tweets, whatever. Big thanks to all of you guys who did that. And then hopefully you guys all had a great Memorial Day weekend. I know I did. It feels nice to be going out and about. Really nice. But nonetheless, I did not announce this last podcast. I want to go over this real quickly. We have a jam-packed set of guests for the month of June. I am excited about this. I'm going to go through the list real quickly. It is not in any particular order. Some of the dates
I'm number 4.
Most of the dates are pinned down, but real quickly, here's the list of guests that we're going to have on. Obviously, you guys have heard Melody McAllister, an author. We'll talk to her in just a moment. Several former Kansas City Chiefs are going to be on the podcast. In fact, tomorrow, former Chiefs cornerback Eric Warfield is going to join me at 8:00 Wednesday Central Time. So roughly 24 hours if you're listening to the live Facebook feed. Former Chiefs cornerback Eric Warfield will be joining me on the podcast. Joe Valerio also going to be coming on. Former tight end Jason Dunn also going to be joining me as well. Also a former Kansas City Chief, very briefly, but better known for his time on Last Chance U and the head coach of Independence Community College, is Jason Brown. Former Chief Scout and KU Scout Dan Shanko will join me from OurLads.com. Big Brother 13 finalist Adam Pock. Really excited to talk to him. He's going to be joining me. Morgan Ganem. He has a Chiefs jingle that the Chiefs still use, if I'm not mistaken, at Arrowhead Stadium. Morgan Ganem, really, really nice guy. He's going to join me. And then the host and founder of Friday Night Cranks, Jared McMullen, will join me later this month as well. So a lot of guests that I'm excited to talk to for the month of June. Some I've had on the podcast, some I've never had on before. So really looking forward to it. But as I mentioned, Melody McAllister, she is the author of this book right here, The I'm Sorry Story. Melody, thanks for joining me. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little pissed, but I'm all right because I know you haven't read it yet. You've had it for months. You've had it for like a freaking year.
We were supposed to do the podcast 20 minutes ago, but you had a prior engagement yet to do. I actually read the book in the last 20 minutes. Yes. Hey, it's a nice book. I like it.
I take back all the mean things I said.
Oh, that's okay. You don't have to do that.
I take back all the mean things I said. You're not a bastard.
Oh, well.
It's all good. You're not a bastard, like I said.
Thanks a lot. No, listen, I've never read it. I mean, how many pages is this,
tell me your thoughts.
I liked it. I mean, look,
I'm 40-something, I think.
Okay, I don't think it was that long. Listen, I liked it.
Numbered.
I mean, it's a book. I
also in Spanish.
Yes, you do have that in Spanish. We talked about that last time you were on the podcast. I do want to get into that a little later. But in terms of my thoughts, hey, look, I thought it was a good book. I think for a target audience, preschool, kindergarten, first, second grade. I mean, I think it's a pretty good book for them. You
think it's for preschool?
I don't know. Do preschoolers read? It's not that difficult of a read. You don't use words outside of like the first grade comprehension language skill.
What? I don't even know what you just said, and I'm going to pretend like I'm completely confused.
Yeah, that's okay. But I liked it. I thought it was a good book. I haven't read it. It was a good excuse to read a book that short for once.
Thank you. And all I said is, like, just take it to the bathroom next time. Like, don't put it off. It's like a quick read. For sure. And here's the thing. I think it's like more of an elementary, maybe third. I've read this to middle schoolers and they liked it. So,
Oh, okay.
and my high school the babysitter that watches our kids is in high school. She liked it, and she's a junior in high school. So
Oh,
I think it resonates with people.
I mean, I don't have kids, but if I ever do, I would definitely keep this for them so they can read it for sure. I think if any of you guys do have kids in elementary and Melody, you mentioned even middle school, hey, it's a good book for them. How can they find this book?
I put it like on our live that it's at bit.ly/I'm sorry story. You can order it off Amazon. You can order it off Barnes and Noble. You can go to edumatchpublishing.com and get it. It's also listed in different like little bookstores all over. So there's good reads. I think it might be on there. So but I know for sure that you can get it off Amazon and Barnes and Noble and EduMatch Publishing. So
I think it's funny you thought I didn't read it when I just read it like 5 minutes ago.
I know. I'm so mean. I'm sorry.
I saw your text.
Farzin, I am sorry for calling you a bastard when I thinking that you hadn't read it yet. Will you please forgive me?
I will forgive you. Yes, that is very nice
Thank
of you. That is part of the book for those who didn't get it. So, no, I thought it was great. What was I going to say? I was going to say something.
Where can they get it? Oh, and
you
the
mentioned
really
that.
cool thing on the back of the book is there are activities and questions. So I am an educator. I taught for 15 years in public school. And so there's lots of activities, and you can go to my website, mjmccallywrites.com. It's all good. I'll put it on the comments right here if anybody's watching this live.
Well, talk about you. I remember you mentioned this was a story that, I mean, it just published last year, but you've had this story written for a very long time. I don't think you've ever mentioned this. How did you come up with the idea for this exact story? Like, what inspired you to come up with something like this?
Right. So most of my years in elementary were in the 5th grade and then the 4th grade. And so like every time we would come back to class, and I wrote this before I had children of my own. I was actually pregnant with my first child. So anyway, that we would come back to class from lunch, or we would come back to class from some sort of specials, PE, whatever. And the kids would be fighting, and I still had to teach like math. And they were mad at each other because for whatever happened, whether they were music class or fight, and it would carry over into the class, and then they would be like mortal enemies. And I'm just thinking, well, listen, you got in a fight, but it's okay. So I would spend so much time trying to help these kids like learn how to apologize and make it right with one another. And I just decided, I just decided to write it. I'm the kind of, all the words are in my head. And one day I just sat on it. And I thought, you know what, I'm about to have a baby. I better write this story, because once she comes, I am not going to probably have the time to do it. So I just wrote it down one day. I took it back to my kiddos in class the next day, and I read it. And I mean, I love ed tech, but I had it on a PowerPoint at that point. Like I had no pictures or anything. I just put it on the screen. No, it wasn't even a PowerPoint. I take that back. It was just document. It was just Microsoft document. And I put it on the projector from my computer, because that's how technology, I was not really very into technology at that point. But anyway, and I read it with my students, and they loved it. They were like, Mrs. McAllister, how did you know? And I'm like, well, because I remember what it was like to be a kid, and I've been with you guys every day. So like, and then we just talked about it. Like we talked about it all year long. That's the thing. We would always go back to it. It's just a better way to help kids understand than lecturing them. Because when you start lecturing kids, you know how it feels. You're just going to be like, whatever. So it was just a good story. It really resonated with them. It's always resonated with the people, the kids, and I've read this to kids all over the world. So yeah.
You've talked to me about this a little bit, but I'll have you discuss it on here. For someone who might be interested in writing a book one day, talk about the publishing process, because I'm always curious about how that works. I know there are multiple ways to do this, whether you go through like a big name publisher or you do it through self-publishing. Can you talk about that for those who may not have any idea how that works in terms of the machinations and stuff?
Yeah, so I love that you asked me this, because I get this all the time. People ask me, how I have a story, what should I do? Number one, you should be writing it. Like, don't wait for a publisher or thing, just start writing. If you, and it kind of depends on the writer that you are. Like, I work for somebody, Alice Keeler, she writes like every single day. She blogs every day. And she has a time in the morning where she writes. I have to really be like inspired by something to write. I need to get away from people and write. And during the pandemic, that's been really hard.
Yeah.
So I want to say, write all that you can, blog. There are so many different free websites, wordpress.com. That's my favorite. And I think it's super easy to navigate, no matter what level of tech you are. So just here, that's what I want to say this, because listen, getting your words out to the public is hard because you're going to get criticism. You're going to get better. What you need to do is you need to start writing and you need to get feedback from people. And that's one way to do that, is blogging. And sometimes if you blog every day, you've written your book over the span of a year. Boom, there you go. You've got your whole book. So I think blogging is the way to go. And then you need to decide, am I going to send this to publishers, or am I going to send it, like go through the Amazon process and self-publish it, which a lot of people, the writers in my community do. So I published with EduMatch Publishing, and we are like an educators for educators publishing company. And I work for Dr. Sarah Thomas, and I'm the logistics manager. So I do a lot of social media for them. And we're kind of a, I think we're 2 or 3 years into this. So we're not a big publishing company, but we're growing. We have over 70 titles. And she gives us a lot of, like, you can find podcasts that are for self-publishing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way to go. Like, especially if you have like a big support, like a big audience, and that you can get your hands quickly into the people. I think self-publishing is super smart because you don't have to share the profit that you have with a publishing company. If you don't have a big following, then you should probably go ahead and search out the publishing company that you want. Now, I'm in education, so EduMatch, I wrote a little bit for another book, and I've contributed to several other books at this point. So my end was EduMatch. But if you're not an educator or you have a children's story, oh my goodness, there are so many Facebook groups. I'm in a children's group on Facebook, and you learn so much. But the one thing that's really important is to write and get feedback on your writing so that you can grow. That was a lot of information.
No, that absolutely, that's great stuff. I mean, shit, I didn't really know much about that stuff. You just showed the book you have in Spanish. You just got this, I want to say 3 months ago, sometime within,
it was like February.
Okay, so it happened earlier this year. How did you get the wheels turning on that project, and how did that all come to fruition?
All right, I love it. So this lady right here, oh wait, there it goes, Nicole Biscotti. She's also an author, and I've had her on my book chat. She and her son wrote this book about how to advocate for your child with ADHD. I can learn when I'm moving. I learn when I'm moving. It's bit.ly, I can learn when I move, if you want to check her out. But she is also she speaks Spanish fluently. I want to say she's a Spanish teacher, but I could be wrong. And anyway, we're really good friends, and I should know this about her. So if she sees this, I feel terrible. Like, I should know what kind of teacher she is. But she's also an author with EduMatch. And so we talked about it, and we just, she translated it for me. It didn't take her very long. And, EduMatch took care to put it into a Spanish version. What I would like to do is actually make it a book where it's both English and Spanish, is a bilingual book. I think that would be the super coolest thing ever. And the font looks really freaky because it's called dyslexia font, and it's a font that helps people with dyslexia be able to kind of see the words better. And that's why I chose that, because as an educator, I had so many students with dyslexia, even in the 5th grade, that had never been diagnosed. And once they were diagnosed and they got some tools to help them, these kids just took off. And I wanted to my whole thing is about being inclusive. So I wanted to make sure it wasn't just full of white kids. And I love the illustrators. My friend Brianna Longoria illustrated it. So I feel like most kids could pick this up and feel like they see themselves in this.
So we do have some people who are joining a little late. I was going to actually ask a question that we had already answered for those who are joining a little late. Steve asked a question in the Facebook comments. He says, what age group is your book for?
I like that, Steve. Thanks for asking. And I think it's definitely elementary. I have read this book to kindergartners through eighth graders, and it resonated with all of them. I did try to read this to my first graders when I was teaching first grade before we moved to Alaska, and they were like, it was a little long for them, but it wasn't illustrated yet, so the illustrations really help. But I would say that elementary, man, I will tell you, I've had great discussion with third through eighth graders. Oh my goodness. This is something that stimulates a lot of conversation, because we all have been through this where people say sorry and they don't mean it. And kids know that. Like, they're not stupid, so this really, really resonates with them.
I wanted to ask you about this school year with education, because obviously, well, not just this year, school year, it's really been the past, 14 months. I still remember I was getting a haircut, and this was like right when things started to go pretty damn crazy with the pandemic. We were kind of just at a loss for words because something like this had never happened. I remember the lady who was cutting my hair at the time, she had moved on, but she was talking about how some of the people she knew are mothers, and they have kids in elementary school and they don't really know what's going on. She has a very close friend whose daughter is close to finishing up nursing school, and I guess they're trying to recruit her quickly because of the whole situation for obvious reasons. And then I remember one of her coworkers walked in and said they just canceled school for the whole year. And in my head, I'm like, holy shit, like this has never happened before. So obviously there has been a lot of adjusting from educators, teachers mostly. And listen, I've seen clips online of kids who are getting on Zoom. It's not just, math or science. I mean, it's even PE, where they're having kids put their laptop and they're doing exercises in front of the computer. Not really the most ideal way, but they seem to make it work somehow. As an educator, what do you think about how the school year, the past 14 months, have been handled with education?
Well, first of all, I just want to say to all the educators out there, you are amazing. Like, they are amazing people. And, some of the educators decided that this just isn't for them anymore because they've had just a hardcore year and a half. And for those people, I just want to say, you got to feed your soul. So take a rest and do something different. Like, there's a lot of teachers that are, they are early retiring, or they're just leaving because they didn't get the support that they needed, but they are rock stars. They finished out the year. And so educators are amazing people. And if we had left all of this up to educators, we probably would have an even better, but sometimes, bureaucratic and just all that crap, the red tape you have to go through. And then I think to myself, who am I to say anything? Like, they know the big picture even more than I do. But I think the educators in this have been amazing. I think the parents who have supported their children and the educators are rock stars. The parents who have decided to homeschool or to keep their kids home and do like a virtual setting, amazing people. Everybody, every school community that has tried hard to get their students learning and keep going during this pandemic are amazing. It has been so hard. I have friends who, were teaching virtual, it's called hybrid, so that they're teaching like kids face to face and they're teaching to kids online. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't go back into the classroom this year, because I do have 5 children and there was just no way that I was going to be able to do that. Like, I'll say right now, like, I didn't want to do that and I didn't have to. And that's a privilege that I had, to be able to stay at home and do other things to make a living. But so there's teachers that have literally been like, I don't know how they do that. That just seems so ridiculous to me that they would make teachers do that, but that's what they've been doing and they've been doing it well. They figured out how it works for them. So, and my kids took some Zoom classes. We went to outschool.com and they loved it. They liked it. So there were some amazing teachers that I got to see. One of my kids took ballet on a Zoom class, and it was just wonderful. My son was in a reading group because he loves the Dave Pilkey, Captain Underpants, and the Dogman books. So, and
I
he
love those
created
when I
like
was
a
a kid.
cartoon. Yes,
They have a
yes.
movie. They have a movie
You are
about that
young.
now, don't they?
Yes, Captain Underpants is so funny.
I think
Yes.
I'll need to check it out just for old time's sake.
Yes. And Steve Ree, if you're still watching, he says, great, I'm going to order for my grandkids. I just want to say thanks, Steve. You're awesome. I
There you
love you.
go. Grandfather Steve doing his grandkids a solid. That's awesome.
Yes.
This is a little off topic. I just kind of remembered this because I wanted to talk about this with you. And look, I'm not saying this wasn't necessary during the pandemic. It absolutely was necessary. I remember when Trump was in the White House, he signed I think it was like a $2 trillion what was it for the stimulus? I don't know the exact term. The corona, it was a 1.8 trillion coronavirus stimulus.
Okay.
And I remember at the time I was like, okay, good, this is a good thing, but I was also a little pissed off at the time because for the longest time we've always heard, and we're seeing for those who are getting all sensitive because I mentioned Trump. I mean, Biden's doing this too, so it's both of them. Because we're seeing Biden spend a lot of money. When I'm hearing a number like 1.8 trillion for this, but in the past we've always been told, man, we don't have a lot of money to spend on education. Well, that's the biggest horse shit ever. Okay, like the coronavirus hasn't been around that long. It feels like forever, but really it hasn't. It's been here for what, a little over a year and a half. And for whatever reason, we had all this money, but we've always been told we don't have money to spend on education. Do you know where I'm getting at? I know for sure you've had
Yes.
discussions about this with other people.
Yes. I mean, oh my God, you're telling these group of people, teachers, to put their life on the line, and to like, some of them were like, some of my friends have been working nonstop since last March. They didn't have a summer break. They've been learning and going to classes, and they have just, here's the thing, pay teachers. Why are we not paying teachers? They are essential workers and they are degreed workers. We put in our kids in their hands. I know, am I not going in the direction you wanted? I agree. We
No.
should have been paying teachers what they owed or what we owe them all along. And we
Yeah.
should be like building up the infrastructures of our schools, making them safe, making sure that we're doing equitable practices with all of our students so that every single one of them can achieve, that they have what they need to achieve, and to get like resources into our school, like more than just one counselor. Like the school that I last worked at, we were sometimes number one largest elementary in a very large district. We had one school counselor and one assistant principal. We needed so much more. And we need a lot more. I was talking to somebody on an airplane. I went to Portland a little over a month ago, and I feel like the lady that I was talking to, she's in high school and she is what is it? Mental health. Oh gosh, my little sister does this, support, like kind of supports like CPS, and I can't think of what her title is, but like she is in the school helping teachers and students, especially as they go through trauma, and social worker. Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay.
So there are schools that I know. Yeah. And I know there are schools in Nevada because I have a friend in Nevada, and there are social workers in the schools. Like we should be spending money on amazing people who are going to do good things for our kids and our school communities. And I'm with you, like, why haven't we been doing this? And now that we're looking, maybe we're healing a little bit more, maybe things are getting better this school next year. Let's not stop the good things that we're doing. Let's keep, throwing money in there, raising the salaries of teachers, getting more support. Paraprofessionals, they need to have a raise as well. And let's, get more counselors in there. I agree. Like we're crazy if we're not spending money on like the system that is like continuing our futures as a free people.
Yeah. I mean, that was like one of the first things I thought of. I'm like, so we do have this money. It's not like, it's so hard to come by. But you think of all the like everything that we are spending on a general basis, especially tax dollars. Like for sure, we can put more money into education. So I just had to get that off my chest because I just remember that when we were talking about the pandemic and everything. But yeah, listen, I don't know about you or how things are. How are things in Alaska, by the way, with the pandemic?
Okay, well,
I like how you chuckled when I asked that.
Well, I went bowling with my kids today and I did not wear a mask, and nobody was like, and I wore a mask to be a thing. I'm double vaxxed. There wasn't a lot of people there. My friends who are neighbors, we play like we're in our little bubble. Things are better. I don't know that our hospitals ever went full capacity, which is a lot different from the rest of the country. And also Alaska, we don't have like a million hospitals all over the place. We are the largest state in the country, but people often fly in to Anchorage to go to hospitals, or flight to come and go to hospitals here. We never hit capacity. I think our numbers, we definitely went up, and we just elected a mayor who said, he was on record on television. I saw him say this, that the pandemic isn't even real, and he was just elected the mayor of Anchorage. All to say, I think that we're doing okay.
Okay, I'm being facetious, but no, that's good.
I think we're doing good. Yeah, I know. But I feel safe here, and it's getting a little bit warmer now that the snow melted. So
no,
this is a real tan. I haven't been putting a fake tan on.
I'm glad to hear that, because this month it really has just been kind of you're seeing a lot of people come out more. And going out, doing things, enjoying life. My brother and I went to a Royals game the weekend of my birthday. And
I'm so jealous.
For the most part, I'm sure you were not jealous of the rain delay. We had to wait quite a bit, but that's all right. For the most part, outside of the employees, not a lot of people had masks. There were a few people who did have masks, and hey, look, just leave them alone about it. No one was bothering anyone, trying to mask shame anyone, and no one was shaming those that were not wearing a mask. So, just everyone's being respectful to one another. Same thing at restaurants. You're starting to see more and more people go out. Some people, or most people, I should say, don't have a mask. A few do. And again, just from what I've seen, people don't really bother anyone. If someone wants to have a mask, hey, let them have it. No one's making a big deal about it. I remember Dana White, who is sometimes viewed as a controversial figure, sometimes says some crazy things, the president of the UFC, because the UFC has been doing some events lately on pay-per-view. Their last couple of pay-per-views have had full capacity in Dallas, and then in, I want to say, Jacksonville. So they've been doing events at full capacity lately. And Dana White said, hey, look, if you want to show up without a mask, you can do so. And if you want to wear a mask, you can do so as well. And you do not have to worry about anyone shaming you. No one should be shaming you, whether you want one or not. And I agree with them. It's just, I see we're kind of moving in that direction now. A lot of people are getting vaccinated. Even people who, I guess, took sides on this politically are getting vaccinated. So it is kind of nice to see. We're just seeing that shift. Look, I'm one of those people. I was willing to be patient. Some people wanted to go out. I understand, whatever. It's just nice to see normalcy. Like, if I had to give a percentage, I think we're like 85-90% back to normalcy, which is great.
Wow, that is awesome. And we're definitely, like, we went to the Old Navy yesterday, and we went in with masks, and there were other people with masks. And then I looked over at my husband, and he took his off, and I was just like, you know what? Like, I'm worried about him more than anybody else in our family. And I just took mine off too, and I just felt so free. And I know that I'll probably be judged by saying this, and but I think we're just ready for some normalcy.
Yeah.
We are putting our life into our own hands if we do this, and there are people around, because we don't really know where all these people are from or what they've been doing.
Yeah.
So we really are taking a risk still, but I think I don't want to judge anybody anymore. I'm just over it.
Yeah. I was in Mexico last month, and it was just weird, having a mask the entire time at the airport. I mean, there were a couple of points where I just took it off for just a quick second and then put it back on. Hey, listen, even the pilot who got on the PA before the flight said, hey, look, there is no debating that these things are pretty damn uncomfortable, but it's federal law. We got to do it to try to get through, and hopefully we're nearing the end of it. So I remember being in Cancun, and Cancun was actually, they went from orange to red. So their COVID situation was getting worse while we were there. And so I was a little concerned, like, are they going to have a shutdown pretty soon? Because the employees working there, I mean, they live in the city. They go home, they go out and
Right.
about. So I was a little concerned about that, but thankfully all okay. I did get COVID tested for the first time. That was quite an experience.
Oh,
Probably the
was that like up your nose?
yes.
Woo!
I would rather get hit by a train than do that ever again. That's how painful that was. But
I feel like if you got a pap smear, you might say the same thing.
uh do you watch The Walking Dead, or have you ever watched The Walking Dead?
No, I
Okay,
don't.
you know what it's about though, right? Zombies.
Zombies, yeah.
So in the first season, so basically, minor spoiler for those who've never seen The Walking Dead. Basically, families are split up, friends are split up, and they try to find one another in this crazy apocalyptic world. And then at some point, they find each other, and the group goes to the CDC. This is the end of the first season, if I remember correctly. And they're at the CDC, and they have electricity, they have beds, they have water, they have food. And during that time, it's like they're living a normal life. And when I was in Mexico, we're taking off our masks while we're sitting at the bar or at the restaurant. And I think back to the Walking Dead episode where they're at the CDC, where they're living this normal life that like nothing terrible exists. So that was kind of an interesting experience, because that was my first time just kind of going out doing anything. Now, going to a Royals game. I mean, and the Royals are now at full capacity. I'm a huge Vegas Golden Knights fan. And yes, I'm fully aware they got their ass handed to them on Saturday or Sunday, whenever it was. That was not fun to watch. I would rather get hit by a train also than watch that game again. But in fact, I would rather watch the Chiefs Super Bowl than that game again. Anyway, it was that bad.
Oh my gosh, I would never watch that game again.
Yeah,
I
I know. I never thought I'd say that, but I did. But where was I going with this?
Oh gosh.
Oh yeah, Vegas.
Yeah.
So I mean, Vegas at one point, they had a really horrible COVID situation, and now they're going to have 100% capacity for their hockey games, and they have a UFC event next month, which is going to be Conor McGregor, so obviously that's a big deal. That's also going to be at 100% capacity. So you're starting to see a lot of normalcy, especially in these places where things at one point did hit the fan. I don't know if you heard about this, but in Kansas City, there were actually a couple of times it made national headlines where hospitals were full and could not take anyone else in. I was kind of concerned at one point for my mom because when she had her urgent situation with her dizziness, it was called BPPV, which is basically extreme vertigo. They could not take her to the hospital closest to her home because they were full with COVID. So they had to go to the next nearest hospital, which, wasn't that big of a deal. But I just kind of thought about that in the moment. It was like kind of concerned, like, oh shit, you kind of just realize how bad it was. But we're starting to get better. So thank goodness for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does feel like there's a little relief. I will say that I did not mind because I flew to Portland just to get away for a little bit. And I wore the mask, in the airport and all through Portland. And I didn't feel weird about that. I felt good about wearing it because when you're in an airport, like you are really with people that have been all over the place. And even if you protect yourself, like you just never know what you have. I feel better about like going maskless here. Like I don't mind because I'm generally around the same people. But I don't think that we should stop wearing masks. I mean, look at the flu. One of my good friends here, she's a nurse practitioner, and she's like, I haven't seen flu patients at all this year, and we were all laughing when we started getting the colds. And it's mostly allergies. I know my kids have allergies because they don't have fevers. But it's like it's weird because we have kept these masks on and we've socially distanced and we've like enjoyed better health this last year than we ever have, and I love that because I have 5 kids. So when one starts puking, I have like 2 or 3 weeks of puking nonstop. So
what is it like
I don't know.
being a parent of 5 kids? It's probably a loaded question. Okay, so like Memorial Day weekend, you've got this nice 3-day weekend. Like, you probably have all 5 kids, each wanting to do something different than the other.
Well, you know, they definitely do. We have our norms. Now, I think having more kids is easier than having less kids. And like my oldest is 12 and a half. She can help me with the baby who's 3. They're actually 9 years exactly apart. They share a birthday. And so, and now my son, and we still haven't potty trained that boy, and we should. We're just being lazy. So I will tell, how is it different? We used to be like on the ball with the other kids, and now we're just like super lazy. But it's it's been kind of cool through the pandemic. They would be like, oh my gosh, I want to see friends and everything when we weren't going anywhere. And I'm like, y'all are so lucky that you have built-in friends. Do you know how many kids out
Yeah.
there, they don't have brothers and sisters? They're
Yep.
just by themselves. Like, you guys are so lucky. Yes, they fight, but I'm starting to see also where they protect each other, because now that we are spending more time with neighborhood friends, and the feelings get hurt, things like that. I watch my son. I'm so proud of him. He just is always making sure that his sisters are okay. He'll stop playing with his friends to make sure that his little sister is not feeling left out. And then I worry though, we've homeschooled for the last 2.5 years since we moved here to Alaska. I worry a lot of times about, like, are they losing their social, their drive to be social? And
Yeah.
that worries me. And I'm like, now that the pandemic is starting to not, I don't fear it so much. I want to get them back involved in things because they really need to be around kids a lot. And this last year, before the pandemic, we were always doing things. We'd go to the museum and we would do things during the day. And then we stopped doing that. So kids really do need to be social. Um, and that part is coming back. But I would have to say that, gosh, it doesn't feel that hard anymore. As a parent of 5, what worries me is that I'm not doing enough for them all the time. I have to really think about the guilt that I have. Like, am I making sure that they each, do my daughters feel like they're beautiful? Are they getting that constant love from me where I'm supporting them so that they don't grow up and like hate themselves? Because I had to overcome a lot of that, where
Yeah.
like I'm 40 years old and I finally feel like I'm worth something. It took me this long. I don't want my girls to grow up and feel like that. So I think it's hard emotionally thinking about all the needs that they have. And as my oldest gets older, poor thing, she's the first one. So here I am making so many mistakes with her. I'm like, God, I just need to put them all into therapy. Like, we all just need to go to therapy. It's They're really good kids. They generally, yeah, they don't like to do everything the same ones. They still like going to the park. They love riding their bikes.
Yeah.
When we go places, they're just, I guess my husband and I are super blessed to have amazing kids, and
That's
we're
good.
learning. We make a lot of mistakes, yeah, but I don't know if I answered that question well. It's hard,
No,
but
no, that was
the
great.
part of it, the emotional part is the hardest thing, really, because all 4 of my kids can dress themselves. They don't pee the bed. It's wonderful. Like, they're big. They can make their own peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then they help me when I'm working because I work a lot throughout the day. They help with the youngest. So we've become a system now. If they could just start doing their chores regularly without me having to cuss at them, I would just be
Well, no, I love that story about
amazing.
your son just looking after his sister. That's what a brother's
Yeah,
supposed to do.
yeah, he is such a good, and he's the best brother for his little brother. Oh my gosh, you would love that, Farzin. He, like, I just sometimes it chokes me up because I didn't see this stuff growing up. I
Yeah.
didn't see it. Like, we were always fighting and we're tearing each other apart, and shoot, we're adults doing that. I mean, I love my kids. They're amazing, and I probably am screwing up left and right, but hopefully they'll have what they need to like heal and be good adults.
Remind me, how long have you lived in Alaska for?
So we just hit 2 years in March, middle of March. So a little over 2 years.
Okay, I've got to ask this because I've only met, I think, one person from Alaska in college who I met.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know anyone else in Alaska other than you. So
Hmm.
what is Alaska like in the summertime? Because I remember, of all things, I was watching Cops, and it was in Alaska, and it was at 3 a.m. and you can see the damn sun at
Yeah,
3 a.m. during the summertime. I mean, is it weird? Is it like describe that
it
for me?
is weird. It is really weird, and it's hard to explain. You have to experience. So I think we still get like 4 hours of like dusk, so it never gets really dark here in the summertime. I think this. I can look at my app. I'm pretty sure today the sun rose at 4:36 because I woke up and
Good
started
Lord.
working. Yeah,
4:30.
I had to start. I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back to sleep. Yeah, the sunrise this morning was 4:30 a.m. and the sunset tonight is at 11:20. So what is that? 5 hours
What?
almost. And at the middle of June, or no, like the solstice, the summer solstice will have the shortest day of the year, and we'll have probably like 4 hours of dusk. But then you go further north, and some places in Alaska get absolutely no night at all. You know, the closer to the North Pole, the less sun that you get. And it really is crazy. So my husband, I was working one night, it was like 9 o'clock because I do a lot of work. I work different. I have my own business. So I just like whatever works for me. So around 9 o'clock, I start doing some stuff. And he was outside doing marshmallows and s'mores with the kids around the fire. And then he put his earbuds in, and it's still, the sun is out. It's 9, but it's still perfectly like, it doesn't even look like evening yet. And so the girls had gone to our neighbors, one of my good friend's house. It was 9:30. They were knocking on the door to see if their little friend could play. I get a text message like, "Do you know that your kids are at my house right now? My kids are in bed." And school was still going on, and I'm inside working. So Mac, my husband, he was just like listening to music by the fire and totally forgot about everything. And but yeah, and when we first moved here, we had some more homeschoolers that were in our neighborhood, and I remember them knocking on our door at like 10:30 to see if the kids could come out and play. And I'm like, no, they're already in bed. But it isn't, you know. And one day we went to Seward. We just at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like at least a 2 hour trip. It could be longer. Um, and we went there. We spent a few hours. We got home at midnight, and the sun was not even down yet.
Good
It was
Lord.
crazy.
Do you
Yeah.
know anyone that's lived in Alaska their entire life and then moved to Kansas, let's just say, for instance, and they finally experience nighttime for like a long, like that has to be weird for them too.
I have talked to several people who grew up in Alaska, left Alaska, and then moved back to Alaska. Like, I'm like, what? That's crazy. And the thing is, Farzine, in the wintertime, we get like 4 hours of sunlight. So it flip flops. And then we're like almost in darkness for most of the
It's
day.
crazy.
It is crazy. And it plays with your head. It F's with your head. There's a lot of people that come here and they don't leave, like they come here married, but they don't leave married. Like that kind of stuff plays with your head.
What's the
It's crazy.
warmest day you can recall in Alaska in the 2 years you've lived there?
Yeah. So it's funny. We were talking about this weekend. I thought it hit 100. So 2 years ago, we broke highs, but it turns out it was in the 90s. And I think that we did get the late 90s, but it felt like 100 to me. And so set records. There were fires burning all over our state. I remember flying in from Philly because I had a conference coming home from Philly, and I remember seeing all the fires in the forest, riding over them. And it was a really, really hot summer. And we had never experienced summer without an AC. Most houses here do not have ACs. And so I remember getting into the car and I asked my husband, because we had left, we didn't bring fans with us. That was not what we brought with us here. I was like, please tell me that you bought some fans. And he's like, no. And of course, by that time, they were all sold out.
Yeah.
And so I had to order fans off Amazon.com. And we spent 1 week super hot, like in our, it was just so hot. It was ridiculous. We had the windows open, but it was just really hot.
Oh,
But right now it's like 60 something, 50 something. It's June and it doesn't feel like it at all.
anyone who knows you, anyone who's listened to the podcast and has listened to you before, they all know you're a Chiefs fan.
Yes.
So the thing is, you're in Alaska, and honestly, I've never given this thought until you and I have started interacting with each other. So if a Chiefs game comes on at 12, it is 9 o'clock your time. And
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
I was in Vegas a couple of years ago for the Chiefs and Chargers game. It was the one where McCole Hardman had the kick return touchdown. And I remember it was 10 o'clock. For whatever reason, like 99% of the time I'm in Vegas, the Chiefs always have like the late afternoon game. So 3:25 Central Time, but 1:25 Vegas time. And so waking up and getting ready to watch a Chiefs game in like 2 hours was one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced. Do you, first of all, I know in Alaska, you don't, unless you have Sunday ticket, your options are limited when it comes to what games are available on TV, but the Chiefs have been on CBS for a lot of the country, more so lately because they're so good. They're a top tier team. But are you like, what do you, are you eating breakfast while watching the Chiefs? Like, what, how does that work?
No, it seemed like most of the games that I watched on television for the Chiefs were always around 11 a.m. They weren't super early. I mean,
Okay.
earlier than what I'm used to for sure. But it seemed like they were between 11 and 1. And so I was able to catch most of them, except for and then there were some, what is it, Monday night or Thursday night when they play? It was just a little bit later. Those are like maybe 3 o'clock games, I think. Definitely earlier in the day.
Monday night
Definitely
football
early.
at 3 o'clock. That's the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard because so for Mother's Day, my husband got me the MLB package so I could watch the Royals play. And I
Okay.
cannot remember, like it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm sitting here working and I forget, oh my God, turn on the television or turn on your computer because I do like the AirPlay so I can watch it on the television. And I'm just like, but I keep forgetting that I can watch them play. So yeah, because it's different. It's a different time. And my friends are eating dinner and I'm eating lunch. So it does suck. And I think about time zones all day long because most of the people that I work with are either Central or Eastern time. So yeah, I think about.
I remember I dated someone who traveled a lot for work, and I was in Vegas and she was somewhere on the East Coast. I want to say Philadelphia, but I'm not sure. But she sent me like this good morning text while I'm still sleeping.
Farzin, whatever
Yeah,
happened to her?
right. Yeah,
She the
sure.
one that got away?
Uh, whatever. Anyway, I'm still sleeping, and here's this girl texting me at freaking 5 a.m., 4 a.m., whatever. I don't remember. It's like, listen, you've been to Vegas before, okay? You don't go to sleep at 9 or 10 o'clock. You go to sleep at 1 o'clock in Vegas, okay? You enjoy the hell out of everything in Vegas. So to get a text at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. is like the most annoying thing ever. So
It is.
yes, not fun at all.
the
But
time
anyway,
for me.
Real quickly before you go, so obviously we talked about your book. There's the last thing I wanted to ask you. Do you have ideas for other, I mean, you don't have to say them because obviously, you never know. Someone else hears the idea, oh, they'll take it. You never know with these people sometimes. But do you have ideas for other books that you want to write in the future?
Yeah, I just wrote my second book and I've already had it read by several of my friends who are also authors, and it's called Booger Eater, and it is freaking hysterical. If you can get past the gag, a lot of my adult friends are like at first it was hard because I really get into the particulars of eating your boogers. And
Alrighty.
right. But it is funny. And I read it to my kids. I read it to my kids the night I wrote it. And they're like, wait a minute, you just wrote this like tonight? Because I went into my room for like 3 hours and I just started writing. And before they went to bed, I read it to them and they laughed so hard. And my friends, I sent it to them and they're just like, this is disgusting, but also this is a good story. And so I don't know if I want to write it and make it a chapter book or shorten it a little bit for a children's book or do both. I did get to read it to my friend who teaches 7th or 8th grade a couple weeks ago, and they really liked it. So I'm excited about what's coming next. And if I go chapter book, I don't know that I have to have a lot of illustrations, but if I go children's book, I need to have an illustrator. So, but I'm excited about it. And I thought my next story would be like another I'm sorry story, but this hit me. When inspiration hits, I write.
Awesome.
And that's what I did.
Well, we'll have to wait on that when it comes out.
Yeah. watching my kid eat their booger was just like so inspirational.
I just, there needs to be like a section in the book where like you talk about like what inspired you to write this, because I think that would be something a lot of people like. Here's the thing: if you're a parent and you see your kid reading that, you're gonna kind of question the hell out of that, aren't you?
Yeah, but I mean, come on, you saw how many of your classmates eat their boogers. I have seen so many students eat their boogers, and so one of my kids was getting made fun of by another one of my kids for doing that when we were going through Taco Bell, and I'm just like, I felt bad for my kid that like picked her nose, and I'm just thinking, I don't want her to grow up thinking she's deficient because she's doing something that everybody else is doing, right? There's so many kids. I have so many students that have picked their nose and eat it right in front of me. No shame, no shame at all. And
Good Lord.
and so we started talking about this. My husband and I did. Some kids can't live it down. They're just the booger eater forever. And so we had a lot of conversation about that. And then I went home and wrote the book. And if somebody copies this, then hopefully they make a better book than me. Mine's already written, and it's really good.
Well, there you go. Hey, Melody, last thing real quickly, how can people connect with you on social media?
Yes, I love that. Thank you, Farzin. They can so I am at MJ McAllister Writes. I'm going to put it in the comments. On Twitter, I am at MJ McAllister Writes, and if you look up Facebook, I am facebook.com MJ McAllister / MJ McAllister Writes. And that's basically my handle on everything. I'm pretty consistent on Instagram, MJ McAllister Writes, and that's 2 L's. MJ, okay. MJMCALLIWRITES Writes. If you are a teacher and you're listening or you want to read aloud, I do a lot of read alouds with my I'm Sorry story. So, and bit.ly / I'm Sorry story for the English version. bit.ly / I'm Sorry story Spanish for the Spanish version. And yeah, and I do a book chat if you follow me on my socials, you'll see I interview authors every Wednesday. We talk about all this wonderful stuff. So yeah.
All right.
Farzin, thanks for having me on here. I love talking with you. It's so much fun.
No, I really enjoy having you on the podcast. Thanks for always making time for the podcast. I know you're busy and you've got 5 kids. You're doing 10 things at once. So definitely appreciate you making time for the podcast.
And still looking good, Farzin. And still looking good is all I gotta say.
All right. That's enough. I'm gonna mute your mic here on Zoom right now. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, seriously, thank you for coming on. We'll have to do this again. You heard her social media, where to get the book. Go check it out. Get it for your kid, niece, nephew, grandkid, whoever. The I'm Sorry story available in English. Yes, English and in Spanish. There it is right there for those of you who can see the video version of the podcast. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up in exactly 22 hours and 50 minutes, less than 24 hours. Eric Warfield, former Kansas City Chiefs cornerback, he is going to join me on the podcast. We will stream that live right here on my Facebook page. If you missed the live version of it, don't worry. The podcast version will be out about an hour or two after the podcast concludes. So Eric Warfield will be on. I believe we haven't confirmed it yet, but Jason Dunn should be coming on within the next week as well. And then we've got a couple of more guests that'll be on. If you want to see the full guest lineup for this month, go to my Facebook page or my Twitter page. I have it pinned to the top of both my pages, so you can see all the guest lists on the entire guest list, I should say, on there. And no dates yet for all of them, but they're all confirmed for the month of June. So I'm very excited for the podcast this month. And then I'll probably take a little bit of a break in July, since I'll be in Vegas for the first week. But appreciate you guys joining me. Big thanks to Melody McAllister for joining me here on the podcast. Check out her work. Until then, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Eric Warfield will be on the podcast. Talk to you then.